Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I closed my eyes to start meditation. There were four people, and then suddenly people appeared. Very nice. I wanted to just say a few words about walking meditation, because everything that we really do here um, uh, during retreats, obviously we do more training, but people come and we experience and we observe together what's going on. And I remember when I was invited once to give a talk at the Atlanta Zen Center. We did our meditation first and then walking, and I was walking with the other members there, and I was walking around the room, and then suddenly I realized that they were walking in two groups, one in a small circle on one side and one small circle on the other side, and I was going all the way around. So when we go to a retreat, and sometimes you'll have a walking meditation, and will be asked to go and walk on their own. So you pick 2 points and you walk at your own pace in between the 2 points. This is very common, particularly in Theravadan tradition, where you walk between two trees and you do your meditation this way, walking meditation. You don't have to be concerned about anything except you get to one point and then you turn around, go back the other way. So the mind can stay very quiet, focusing on the point of contact between the foot and the floor, or the foot and the ground. When in the Chan tradition, we walk in a circle together, we want to be more concerned about group instead of about self. And so we don't walk in that same way that we do in the Theravadan tradition. Usually we like to be able to walk with a certain spacing between ourselves and the person in front of us. So we're not just doing our own thing, we're walking as like a group. So usually the space between ourselves and another person is just a one person, maybe 3 feet, 2 feet in between, and we walk together in that way. We're not too concerned about whether our feet move at the same pace, but just keeping our ranks more consistent that way. Okay, so Huayan Buddhism, that I've been giving a number of talks. I think this is the fifth or sixth talk I've given, sixth talk I think I've given on Huayan Buddhism, which is really very Chinese school of Buddhism that existed for about 250 years in the Tang Dynasty. Well, I won't go through the history of this, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about what inspired Huayan Buddhism, how it first came to be, and some of the concepts in Huayan Buddhism and how they're applicable in terms of understanding our own practice. So I'm going to talk about pure consciousness and defilements today. Maybe. Okay. Okay. Let's see if I can. I'm supposed to go one way or the other. Oh, okay. Okay. So during the Tang Dynasty, there were four great philosophical debates. First one was to how to organize the sequence of the Buddhist teachings into a sequence of 5 different stages, and many of the different schools had their own stages. We won't talk about that today. How to understand the one vehicle and the three vehicles. Maybe this is a topic for another time. How to understand sudden and gradual enlightenment. That was my last talk. And today I'm going to talk about how defilements come from pure consciousness, how they interrelate with each other. So going to be using as a source text, one of them is the Awakening of the Mahayana Faith. This is a very important early text. We dated back to about the 3rd century, maybe, AD or CE. And in this text written by Ashvaghosha, we believe, Ashvaghosha is kind of a legendary character. We're not sure exactly when he lived. In some lineages, they have him 2 lineage masters before Nagarjuna, who was in the 2nd century. And then some people place him later. There's really no dispute about whether there's one Ashvaghosha, because the legends about him are the same. But we're not sure exactly. The text that we have is really a Chinese text. We don't really have the Sanskrit original, even though it was translated from Sanskrit, possibly by a few different times by Mark and by Xuanzang. So we're not sure of the particular origins, but I'm using the Chinese text and not the Sanskrit one, since we don't have an authenticated Sanskrit one. So this text, the essence of the text begins with a section that's called One Mind, Two Aspects. And this is an explanation of how, of what the mind is doing, what it's like, what consciousness is, and what we're trying to do with our consciousness when we're practicing meditation, when we're in the world, trying to perhaps in some ways figure out how to be a better person, how to become enlightened. This is the essence of this particular text. And so it's divided this 2 aspects of the mind. One aspect is called thusness or suchness. The Tathagata is a Sanskrit word. And this text really talks about the essence of what the mind is, what the pure mind is about. What is the consciousness before it got messed up, before it got defiled? And then the second aspect of the mind is the phenomenal mind, the mind the ordinary mind that we have that goes around in the world and processes our conventional events and phenomena called dharmas. We see the rising and ceasing of our experiences. So suchness, we'll call it, and emptiness are interconnected with each other in this text. And so when we rely on words, suchness has 2 meanings. What are the 2 meanings? One is suchness is empty, because it is ultimately not a reified reality. In other words, it is beyond what we would think of as something solid. It has emptiness in it, part of that. And then there's another aspect, which is called suchness that is not empty. That's when the suchness actually interacts with our content in our lives, the world. And this is happening all the time. So we can say that without even being aware of it, this suchness, this pure consciousness is operating all the time. And then we become in contact with the world, and that contact with the world creates its own aspect we call suchness that's not empty. So the translator of this text from the Chinese into the English was done by a Japanese translator, Akeda. And he's quite helpful in referring to the method of argument here called affirmation is negation and negation is affirmation. Oh, that's helpful. He uses several examples, like when saying this is a pen. Yes, that means that it's not a cup. Okay, so it negates something else. And if we say that this color is blue, well, it's also saying that this is that it is also saying that this was some other color. So it's affirming some other color. When saying suchness is emptiness, that means that it is empty of all concepts, but it doesn't mean that it's non-existent or emptiness is not non-existence. It affirms that emptiness has some state of being, even if it is part of non-being. So suchness and enlightenment are interconnected with each other. So the awakening of the Mahayana faith continues with the next section on the mind in terms of phenomenon. This begins with the discussion of the storehouse consciousness, a way of jnana, grounded in the womb of suchness, Tathagata Garbha, Ulai. Consciousness has two aspects. It has an enlightenment aspect and it has a non-enlightenment aspect. So based on the teachings of the Buddha and then later Nagarjuna, we know that the mind is said to have within it the capacity for enlightenment at any moment. So each person, every sentient being has this potential for enlightenment. If the potential for enlightenment didn't exist within the mind to begin with, how would you end up putting it in there? How would you get it inside? Wouldn't make any sense. So it has to exist already in the mind. But somehow or other, we don't know it. We don't know that it's there. It's obscured, as we say. It's covered up. We can't see it because it's invisible to us because there's so much stuff on top of it. The vexations are endless. We vow to eradicate them. We want to get rid of the stuff that's obscuring us from being able to become enlightened. Now, this is a little bit of an opposite view to how we look at things in the West, because in the West, we look at achievement and accumulation. We want to attain something. We want to gain something. So when successful, we gain something. We don't usually think of being successful by losing something or getting rid of something. That's a little bit of a foreign idea. So we obsessively try to gain more and more. So when we hear about enlightenment, the very first thing that we do is we say, "Oh, I'm going to work to become enlightened. I'm going to gain enlightenment. I'm going to attain enlightenment." Later, when we do the chanting of the Heart Sutra, you'll see a line in there where it says, "There is no attainment. There's nothing to be attained." Why is there no attainment or nothing to be attained? Because it's already there. This is the awakening of the Mahayana faith view. And the view of the school of Yogacara that talks about the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness. It contains all the seeds, including the seed to become a Buddha, the seed to become enlightened. But this non-enlightenment, this covers us up. It makes it difficult for us to see that quality. That's what this text is about. How do we deal with that? In the next, this is a chart that from a previous talk where we talked about the 8 consciousnesses in Yogacara. The first 5 are the senses, the five senses. And then we have the mind sense, the mind that, the first part of the mind that gathers all of that together. And then there's the mind that creates a self. It's very troublesome. And then there's this storehouse consciousness that contains the seeds of karma that allows us to have a Buddha nature. And then in this particular school, there's a ninth consciousness, which is the Tathagata consciousness, the womb of suchness. So there's some debates about this as we move to the next slide. So the original enlightenment, the root enlightenment, we might say, is like space. It pervades everywhere. This is called the original enlightenment. The initial enlightenment or initial awakening arises because we're not enlightened to, we're not aware of this original enlightenment. So we have this first glimpse of, oh, there's a path where I can become enlightened. So we have this first glimpse. Probably most people who come to the monastery here have had some kind of glimpse. Otherwise, why would they travel all this way? Except if maybe if it's an assignment to your class. And then maybe even so, we don't know the karmic seed there. So when an ordinary, uninstructed worldling, yes, becomes aware of the harmful thoughts, and then is able to stop that harmful thought from becoming a next harmful thought arising, this is called the awareness within non-enlightenment. Person gets, oh, I don't want to continue harmfulness. I want to stop harmfulness. I want to become fully awakened. And then in the next stage, the practitioners, we say the two vehicle practitioners, or even the beginning bodhisattvas, they're able to perceive the arising of thought. And they see it as not different from non-arising. In other words, the arising and the non-arising, the distinction between that duality disappears. This is difficult sometimes for people to understand without the direct experience, but that's how it's described. In this way, they practice abandoning the coarse defilements. That's easier for people to understand as we get into this. And they try to do this as best they can. And as a result, they experience what's called a semblance or an appearance of awakening. But without good instruction, they may misperceive this as true enlightenment. So they enter into a state where the mind, oh, I'm in the flow. I'm feeling interconnected with everything. Things are making sense to me. All is well. And they perceive that as, oh, that I must be enlightened until something goes wrong. Yes. Then they lose it. But then they come back to it again and again, and they strengthen that. And they begin to be aware of these things that are in the way that cause them to have these difficulties. These are called the coarse defilements. In the next stage, in partial awakening, the bodhisattvas, these are considered more advanced, are able to perceive the thought as just dwelling or abiding, yet without the mark of dwelling. So in other words, they are aware of what's happening, but they don't attach to it. They've abandoned all 6 coarse defilements, but they're still subject to the 3 subtle defilements. Oh no, it's more defilements. This is called a partial awakening, still not fully awakened here. But eventually, the bodhisattva attains the highest stages skillful means and complete each of the single moments of mindfulness, and the mind arises without any subtle defilements, and this is called perfect or ultimate awakening. So I have a chart. Yes. And we have a non-enlightened state. Then the enlightenment is appearance, and the approximate enlightenment or partial enlightenment, and then the ultimate enlightenment. And these are the different stages that people go through. And so in order to be able to do this, we have to know about the defilements. There are some metaphors here that are used. They say that the mind is like a great ocean. And the ocean, due to the wind, there are waves in the ocean. So when the mind becomes calm, no more wind, then you can see the true nature of the ocean without the waves. There's another metaphor going to the next stage, next slide, the mirror metaphor. When you look into the mirror, you can see more clearly your virtues and your faults. As such, the mirror inspires us to cultivate our capacity for goodness. And the mirror metaphor shows up a lot in Chan Buddhism, in the poetry contest between Huayan and Zhangzhou, for example. This mirror metaphor shows up as well as discussion of mirror wisdom. But we won't take that tangent for right now. We'll go to the next slide on unenlightenment. So the fundamental delusion that stands in opposition to our original enlightened nature, which is responsible for our inability to discern our fundamental nature of suchness. This is a mistake where we take the imagined as real, and ignorance begets our karma, reaping as its results more rounds of transmigration and suffering. And the unenlightenment is the enlightened mind covered over and obscured by the coarse and subtle defilements. So the word for defilement, I want to share this with you in Chinese, Ron, is a picture of three separate ideograms. At the bottom, we have a plant. And on the left-hand side, we have water, and on the right-hand side, we have the number 9. If you look at this and you say, well, what is a plant and water and the number 9? What is this all about? Why would they put this number 9 in there to begin with? So the term defilement, klesha in Sanskrit, comes from a Pali word that means stained or soiled. Defilement in Chinese means to dye or to pigment. Another meaning is to become ill or contaminated by the self or by others. So most dyes at this time were made from plants, mixed with water, and then the fabric would be dipped into the dye. Cloth would be dipped into the dye multiple times, over and over and over again. We'll say 9 times. So this is where the word comes from. But this also has its roots in the original teachings of the Buddha. Monks, suppose a cloth were stained and dirty, and a dyer dropped it into some dye or other, whether blue or yellow or red or pink, it would take on that dye badly and be impure in color. And why is that? Because the cloth was not clean. So too, monks, when the mind is defiled, an unhappy destination in the future may be expected. Or in another sutta, original teachings of the Buddha, again, imagine Brahman, a bowl of water mixed with black, tamaric, dark green, or crimson dye. If a man with good eyesight were to look at the reflection of his own face in it, he would not know or see it as it really was. In the same way, Brahman, when a man dwells with his heart possessed and overwhelmed by sense desires, he cannot know or see it as it really is, his true nature. So the number 9 is going to be important here because there are 6 coarse defilements and 3 subtle defilements. The mind has been dipped 9 times into this dive. So I will try to explain some of these defilements. So the first defilement, which is the most coarse, is that the mind continually goes back and forth between I like this, I don't like that. So when I like something, oh, that's very nice. When I don't like it, oh, I push it away. Or I get angry, upset. So I crave what I want and I hate what I don't want. And the mind goes back and forth between these two things. And this is the first of the course defilements. And you would think, oh, well, now that I know about that, well, I'll just stop that. Not so easy. Because of the second defilement, this continuity, this feeling of pleasure and pain that we derive from our experiences is something that continues to affect us. It's like Newton's law of motion and inertia. You know, that which stays in motion will continue in motion unless acted upon by another force. And so it is that the mind, when it's involved with liking, disliking, pain, and pleasure, if no other force acts upon it, it's just going to continue that way. Fortunately, we have the original mind of enlightenment that wants to interact with that and say, wait a minute here, I don't like to be disturbed and distressed so much. The third of these very strong coarse defilements is the defilement of craving and attachment, craving and clinging. We attach to it, get stuck to it. So I'm going to do my best to hold on to what I like. I'm going to try to possess it, appropriate it. And eventually this is going to fail, unfortunately. And then we will be in distress again. So this is a more subtle defilement, but still in the course defilement area. The next 3 are a little bit trickier to understand. It's still coarse, but it seems rather subtle to us. And that is that we tend to put names on things. So the easiest way to understand this is that when you like something, you associate a name to it that is pleasant and positive. If you don't like something and you associate a negative name to that. We see this particularly happening in politics. At one time, diversity, equity, and inclusion was a very positive term. And then somehow or other got twisted around. So the naming of things then creates its own force. And that this then initiates what's called karma. All of these things together, they create our karmic seeds, or reinforces the karmic seeds that we have. And then we get caught up, we get bound by that karma, and we're fettered by it. We can't loosen ourselves from it. It's like we feel stuck to it. So, of course, as you know, I like charts. So, so another chart. Yes. So then we have three subtle defilements. And these three subtle defilements have a lot to do with non-duality. So this karma that we've been stuck to then propels us by this force of ignorance, of not understanding what it is that we're doing to ourselves. And this is like turning off a light. Well, it's like if you go into a room that's totally dark and you're going to stumble and you're going to bang into things. And that's what happens at this stage. And then we have this duality of the subjective perceiver that is another kind of subtle defilement. We see ourselves as separate from others. And then we create a duality. I like this person, I don't like this person. That goes back to the original course defilements that keep bouncing us back. And then we perceive the subjective world as something solid and real. Of course, it just seems that way to us. Don't get me started in quantum physics. But this objective world and our ideas and concepts about the objective world and our attachment to those concepts, this creates another level of defilement. So we have these seven defilements. We're not going to get into the debates about the Tathagata and the Alaya Vijnana. There's lots of stuff that has to do with that. So there are 4 stages to reverse this flow. We want to be able to reverse this flow. And this is discussed originally in the Phena Sutta, the original sutta of the Buddha. He talks about the emptiness of form and emptiness of feeling and perception and mental formations and consciousness is all the 5 aggregates. So the emptiness is form, is like the foam, a piece of foam in the river. And then feeling is like the emptiness that you have when bubbles from the raindrops come and they pop. And perception is like seeing a mirage in the desert. And the mental formations, this habitual patterns that we have, is like the emptiness inside of a banana tree. You don't know about banana trees, but they're hollow on the inside. And then consciousness is spoken of as the emptiness of a magic trick. Now, suppose that a magician or a magician's apprentice were to display a magic trick at a major intersection, and a man with good eyesight were to see, observe it, and appropriately examine it. To him, seeing it, observing it, and appropriately examining it, it would appear empty, void, and without substance. What substance would there be in a magic trick? In the same way, those and sees and appropriately examines any consciousness that is past, future, present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near to him, seeing it, observing it appropriately, examining it would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance would there be in consciousness? Like a magic trick. So it turns out that in modern day philosophy of mind consciousness, one of the four major schools of this is called the illusionist school. There are people, whole bunches of folks who talk about consciousness as an illusion. There are other schools as well, but we won't get into that here today. But I think it's interesting that still in the 21st century, people are talking about consciousness as a magic trick. So our intuitive understanding of consciousness as a unified qualitative stream of experience is deeply flawed, according to the school. Consciousness may be more like a useful trick or model than a fundamental reality. This is a direct quote from the school. So what are these four stages to reverse? Well, just those things that we just talked about. Going from the non-enlightened state to a state of experiencing semblance of enlightenment, approximate or partial enlightenment in order to get to ultimate enlightenment. So these are the different stages that we go through. I'm going to go through the teaching diagram in 800. So this is a translation of a teaching diagram. I'm thankful to Arthur Whalen, who put this, he translated this for his doctoral dissertation. Some of the best work that's been done in Buddhist philosophy and understanding are done by graduate students when they're getting their doctorate degrees. So here's a diagram that he put together to understand how suchness and ignorance come together to make the one mind in the two aspects. And here's another more fancy diagram that he has in the text that goes and talks about the 10 modes of enlightenment and 10 modes of non-enlightenment. And this is from a text in Natasha that he translated and made this very nice model. So finally, this what are the 10 modes of non-enlightenment and the 10 modes of enlightenment? Well, they're the cognitive and the afflictive hindrances that are discussed in the original teachings of the Buddha, and then amplified in the Mahayana. So we get caught in this identity of this is me, this is mine, this is who I am. My individual ego self becomes more important than anyone else. I have extreme views and I hold on to them. This is the way things are. And we realize that these are mistaken views. And then I attach to certain rules and rituals that are associated with these different views. Even in Buddhism, we say, don't attach to even to the precepts or anything like that. Understand that they're there for usefulness, but don't believe that just because practicing the precepts are going to lead you to enlightenment. They can help, but that's not enough. So the antidotes to this is to develop a sense of non-self, to understand how that works. So when you're practicing in meditation, you can begin to let go of this self. You need the self when you're in the world, no doubt about that. If you don't have the self when you're in the world, you're driving along and you may end up in a tree. Or as one of my patients said, end up one with the tree. Have to get fed at the top. Yes. You get an idea of middle way. You're able to see a broad, clear, wide, expansive middle way, then you can avoid extremes. And you learn about right view, the 12 links of dependent origination. You learn about how things are interconnected and how to avoid karmic obstructions. You learn about detaching instead of accumulating. And you learn skillful methods to be able to help yourself and others. And then the afflictive hindrances are the standard ones of craving, hatred, delusion, pride, and doubt. And so instead, we certainly want to cultivate generosity and a sense of contentment. We develop loving kindness and compassion. We want to develop insight and wisdom, humbleness, and a sense of equality. And we want to develop our faith and trust in the path that we're on and our own ability to do that. So that's my little talk for today. I hope that it's helpful and that all of you attain complete enlightenment since you're already there on some level. Next time we take a shower, get rid of all of the vomits. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. All beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be separated from the altruistic joy which is free from suffering. And may all beings dwell in the great equanimity which is free from craving, attachment, ignorance.